Hi, everybody. Welcome to our session, How Veritas Can Help Make Containers Enterprise Ready. I'm Alex Restrepo with our Solutions Marketing, and I'm happy to be introducing Matt Yee, who is with our Technical Marketing Engineering, as well as Ryan Beheel, also with Technical Marketing Engineering, and they're going to take us through. Now, to be clear, at the end of this session, we will be having a live Q&A with both Matt and Ryan, and we'll also have some Q&A available throughout the session, so please feel free to type in your questions, and we'll do our best to answer all of them. So for now, let's go ahead and listen to Ryan and Matt. Take it away, guys.
Thanks. Yeah. So let's take a look at some of the driving factors around container adoption today. So containers have become a fairly mainstream solution, right? And there are several factors driving container adoption these days. So of course, density and performance is often a big reason why organizations do look at containers, as you can often achieve better both density and performance with containers compared with traditional hypervisors. Then there's the idea of moving production software infrastructure from like a pets model to a cattle model. And so this is interesting because the idea is to create a smaller blast radius. So if, for example, if you have a container that goes down, it doesn't really take much, if anything, with it. This can also help with faster disaster recovery. And what this really means at a high level is that moving towards a cattle service model helps businesses deliver a better service with reduced downtime. And containers can help businesses move towards this type of operational model, right? So with containers, if something needs to be updated, fixed, or modified in any way, all you really do is you just build a new one from a common image with whatever changes you need, spin it up, and then decommission the old one. So it's really quite a simple and straightforward process. So this can really help with improving efficiencies for DevOps as well, to leading to things like a faster and more efficient CI/CD pipeline, which means faster development and ultimately a quicker time to value for your IT services, right? So these are some of the main driving factors we're seeing around container adoption today. Also wanted to hit on some of the common storage-related challenges that you might run into relating to containers. Now, this could probably be true for just about any type of environment, but the cost of storage infrastructure is always a big challenge regardless of the environment, and that's no different with containerization. So it's still a factor, and the overall storage performance as well. So this is another factor to consider where we do hear from customers that it can be a challenge within containerized environments. And as well, just being able to provide storage that's suitable for your enterprise applications, right? So another common challenge. Also things like the speed of provisioning storage or just general operational efficiency, another challenge we hear out there. And so the good news is that these are all challenges that Infoscale can really help with. So and of course, backup is always a challenge as well, right? So we're also working on building a solution with both Infoscale and NetBackup to help provide a kind of a robust enterprise data protection solution as well.
Just to mention something else, a key point to note about Kubernetes is that while it does help with managing larger container environments, there are several things needed to make these environments suitable for enterprise applications. This is where Infoscale comes in. So let's talk about how Infoscale will help you create an enterprise-ready Kubernetes environment for your containerized applications.
Yeah, so Infoscale has a very interesting and unique approach for helping you make your Kubernetes environments enterprise ready. And so this is the high-level overview of what we provide for Kubernetes environments, and it's focused really around three main areas, right? So it's enterprise storage management for containers. This is done using the open standard CSI, or Container Storage Interface API. So there's that piece around the storage component. There's application availability for applications actually running inside containers, right? So that's a big factor as well. And then, of course, being able to provide an efficient solution that integrates seamlessly with the Kubernetes native user experience. So that's kind of our high-level overall kind of focus around Infoscale for containers. And I would say really our overall goal is to provide an efficient and robust way to manage enterprise storage and high availability for your containerized apps as a single unified solution. So that's really the key, is to manage the availability and the storage as a single solution. And this will help you avoid things like having to, basically implement independent point solutions to provide the storage and high availability management that's needed by your enterprise applications. So a bit more around the idea of storage management, kind of what we do there to expand on that a little bit. So what we're really doing is we're providing software-defined persistent storage for your containers, and for more specifically for your applications running inside containers, right? But there's a few other interesting things that we can also do along the lines of storage management. So one of them is non-disruptive scaling, right? So basically, if you need to scale up application running within that container to ensure that it's online and that all the processes and the resources it requires are available and running. And from an operational efficiency perspective, again, we're just trying to kind of easily and seamlessly integrate with Kubernetes, right? So that the end user experience that you'd see with a native Kubernetes environment is really going to be about the same. And that's something we've also done very well, I think, with our Infoscale solution for containers and Kubernetes. Right? So I would say probably, overall, the main thing to keep in mind is it's really that Infoscale, it's providing Kubernetes with the persistent storage, downtime mitigation, data integrity, and application level high availability that your stateful applications need to be highly available in containers, right? That's really what we're all about. So let's take a little bit more, closer look at the more technical view of how Infoscale works with Kubernetes and containers.
And just to note again, Ryan, you made a good point emphasizing that Infoscale is providing both storage and application availability management. This integrated solution is unique in the market and can really help ensure that your important applications are highly available in Kubernetes environments.
Yeah, thanks, Matthew. It is really that combination of the availability and storage management as a single solution, right? So it's definitely very unique to what Infoscale provides. So this is a bit more technical view of our overall Infoscale solution for Kubernetes managed container environments. So like what Matthew was saying, again, here you can see that we're actually providing both the persistent storage and the high availability management for your containerized apps as that single solution. So our CSI plugin, it allows Kubernetes to provide persistent storage to the containers it's managing. And then our VCS agents are monitoring the applications running inside those containers, right? So we're going to get a bit more into the details of exactly how all this works. But first, I wanted to kind of take a closer look at how Infoscale solves the problem of keeping your applications online. And this is where our high availability VCS agents come in. So Matthew, can you talk a bit more about what that looks like and basically how it works?
Yeah, absolutely. So we actually have a couple options for how to provide high availability for your applications. Let me show you what this looks like. So in Infoscale 7.4.3, we introduced support for monitoring enterprise application containers running on the Kubernetes platform. Using native Kubernetes capabilities, we can now use Infoscale to make sure that your applications are highly available while running within a container, within a pod, while on the Kubernetes platform. We provide flexible options for providing high availability for your applications by offering a simple out-of-the-box management with a sidecar container, or by enabling you to configure your container itself to be monitored by Veritas Cluster Server. With an out-of-the-box sidecar container, you can use Infoscale to manage and monitor MySQL for high availability with minimal configuration. In addition to providing high availability for your applications, Infoscale can provide the persistent storage, downtime mitigation, and data integrity management for Kubernetes containers, all in a single solution.
Yeah, so again, that is the big thing, Matthew. Like you hit the nail right on the head there. Is that with Infoscale, it's providing both high availability and the persistent storage for your containerized apps, right? And that's done as a single solution. So that's the big thing. So let's take a closer look too at how Infoscale provides the storage for Kubernetes and what interesting features we might have there, as well as some features around how to actually help you migrate your enterprise applications into a container environment. So this is another look at the storage services that Infoscale provides for Kubernetes environments using the Infoscale's CSI plugin. So it's a familiar picture from what you saw previously with a couple more details here. And the main thing to understand really about how Infoscale works within Kubernetes environments is that Infoscale, so it's a storage provider for Kubernetes, right? So this means that Kubernetes can use Infoscale's CSI plugin to present Infoscale persistent storage volumes to applications running in containers within Kubernetes pods. And this is done using a Kubernetes persistent volume claim. And so that's just simply, it's a request for storage by a user, basically. Now, what you see here is that Infoscale is actually installed and running directly on the Kubernetes cluster nodes, right? So it's not an external solution that needs its own operating environment. or hardware, right? Infoscale does actually absolutely support the ability to use SAN storage, whether it's new or existing SAN storage, if that's the platform or storage media that you want to use to provide persistent storage for your containers. But you actually don't need SAN, right? So Infoscale has a cool, interesting feature. It's called flexible storage sharing. And so this is interesting when used in Kubernetes environments because it'll actually allow you to create a shared storage pool using storage directly attached to the Kubernetes cluster nodes, right? So this storage is then visible to all nodes in the Kubernetes cluster. And this storage could run on something like SSD or some kind of very fast storage, which can ultimately result in better overall storage performance for your higher IOPS applications, right? So it's kind of an interesting way to set up a Kubernetes cluster if you need that really high application performance. Now, also note that in this picture, we're also here showing the VCS high availability agents that are used to monitor the apps you have running inside the Kubernetes managed containers. So you can see that up here within the application pods and the containers themselves. The VCS agents are actually there monitoring what's going on with your applications. Right? So that's a bit more about how Infoscale works with Kubernetes from a storage perspective. But we also have some really interesting I/O fencing capability. And so what this does, it helps with managing data integrity for applications running in containers. So Matthew, you're going to tell us a bit about this part, right?
Yeah, for sure. So we have a great I/O fencing solution, which is how we manage data integrity and uptime for your containerized applications running on Infoscale persistent storage. So the key to protecting data in a shared cluster environment is to guarantee that there's always a single consistent view of cluster membership. In other words, when one or more systems stop sending heartbeats, the high availability software must determine which systems can continue to participate in the cluster membership and how to handle the other systems. Veritas Cluster Server uses a mechanism called I/O fencing to guarantee data protection. This feature is integrated with Kubernetes' own fencing system, which prevents data corruption when a cluster node is taken offline. However, when combining Veritas Cluster Server with Kubernetes I/O fencing, the difference can be significant in that with Infoscale, you can actually move an application pod to a surviving Kubernetes cluster node if a node loses communication or goes down. So in a native Kubernetes configuration without Infoscale, the application pod would simply be taken offline. With Infoscale, you have a strong value add over native Kubernetes, as Infoscale ensures that your enterprise applications won't just go away if you run into some kind of communication failure with the cluster, whether it's network, hardware, or software-related problems. So overall, Infoscale is a very interesting solution to help make Kubernetes enterprise ready, as Infoscale can be your single solution to manage both the storage and availability for your enterprise applications. It can even help you migrate from a traditional environment into a containerized environment if that's something you're looking to do.
Yeah, so it really is a very unique solution, right? In that we are providing both pieces that you need to keep your enterprise applications highly available in containers, right? So we're giving you that in-depth application level high availability monitoring. And this goes, again, well beyond just managing whether a container is online or not. We're actually looking at the application processes and the resources that it needs within that container to be online and then usable. Right, so we're providing the high availability piece as well as the enterprise persistent storage that can be configured, using your existing hardware, which is kind of interesting in itself, right? So we also do have some additional features that can actually help you do that application migration into a Kubernetes environment if, again, that's something you're possibly looking to do. So there's a lot of interesting features here as a kind of a single unified solution that'll help you eliminate having to use point products for each one of these different things. So now this is a solution, this is something that we actually have available right now. It was actually released about 2 months ago or a month and a half ago. And so that's very interesting in itself, but we're certainly not stopping there. So there's actually a lot more to come in future releases along the lines of kind of what we're doing with Infoscale for containers and Kubernetes. So we wanted to show you a quick look at the roadmap and what we have yet coming for Infoscale with Kubernetes. So this is kind of a quick look at the high-level roadmap. And the main thing is we're focused on 3 areas that we think are the most applicable to enterprise apps within container environments, right? So this is application performance, application management and user experience, as well as application availability, right? So those are kind of our three main higher level areas of focus. But along the lines of performance, what we're looking to do here is to actually extend the functionality of our Smart I/O intelligent caching feature to containerized applications, right? So this will really help with providing that top tier performance for higher I/O workloads. And Smart I/O, if you're not familiar with it, it's basically a solution that caches frequently accessed application data on fast storage to help you improve your application performance without having to really go and increase your resource footprint or spend a whole lot more money on other solutions, right? It's a software-defined or software-based caching solution, of course. And so again, this can help you save some money, as well as it has some significant performance benefits for almost any type of application, right? So we'll be extending that entire capability into containers as well. From a management perspective, so we're looking to extend our VBS, our Virtual Business Services feature, to containerized environments as well. So VBS, if you're not familiar with it, it's a feature where we can actually logically represent a complex multi-tier app as the business service that it represents, right? So for example, like suppose you have an application like, let's call it airline.com, right? And this app has three tiers. It's got the web tier, the middleware tier, and the database tier. So in order for that airline.com application to be running, all three of those tiers need to be up and running, right? And that's what's providing that overall business service, which is in this case, airline.com, right? So VBS makes it really easy to manage the availability for this entire business service, like airline.com, right? And you don't actually have to manage each of the individual tiers or systems independently. So this can really be a huge benefit in, in a failover scenario where you need to automate the process of bringing up a complex multi-tier app, in the event of a failure. So even if you just want to do something like to test out whether or not your DR plan will actually work, you can use Infoscale's fire drill feature to test an entire virtual business service in isolation before you actually need to execute a failover or takeover. So you have the confidence essentially that your service is going to work and it's going to come online when you need it to, right? And so this entire capability, this is going to be extended to containerized environments in the relatively near future.
So with availability, this is where we have several interesting new features coming. IMF is our intelligent monitoring framework, which is a kernel level event-based notification solution that instantly detects faults with application processes and resources. So this will soon be able to provide instant fault detection for your important applications running in containers. We're also working on the ability to provide replication between Kubernetes clusters to be able to provide a site-level high availability solution, giving you protection against local and site outages. Finally, we're also working on integrating data protection features provided by NetBackup into Kubernetes environments to provide enterprise data protection capabilities for your containerized applications. And so this is our overall roadmap for Infoscale and containers in Kubernetes. Additionally, what we'd love to hear is some feedback from you guys around, are you running applications in containers today? What kinds of applications are you running in your containers? And how are you providing storage and availability for your containerized applications? And finally, what features would you be interested in seeing in future releases of Infoscale?
Yeah, thanks, Matt. That's a good point. So if there are any kind of features that you guys might have an interest in, or that you maybe didn't see here, it's something you didn't see on the roadmap, or just that hasn't been talked about today, we'd absolutely love to have a conversation just to understand what that looks like, and what kind of things that you would be looking for as it relates to containers, right? And then making that container environment, or that Kubernetes environment, enterprise ready. So yeah, anything along that line, we would absolutely welcome a conversation, and we'd be very interested to work with you to understand your overall containerization strategy. And to overall just kind of help you make your Kubernetes container environments enterprise ready. So with that, yeah, thanks for tuning in today here. We wanted to leave a bit of time here for questions as well. So if there's any questions out there, please feel free to throw them out there, and we'll do our best to answer them for you.
All right. Thanks so much, guys, for that session. Fantastic content in there around Infoscale. And it's good to see so many of the tried and true technologies of Infoscale being applied directly to containers. So just as a quick reminder, the poll questions that Matthew referenced earlier on the session are available now. So please feel free to answer the questions. It really helps us make sure that the product stays relevant to the end users. And so please, if you have a chance, fill out the poll questions. There is at least one question that we have right now in the Q&A. And it's really specific, but I think it's a good one. Can you use the VCS property for Kubernetes without using InfoScale storage? And so Matt, Ryan, you guys want to tackle that one?
Yeah, so the answer is yes, you can run them separately. There's no dependency that forces you to run both.
Yeah, I think one of the things, it's an old analogy, but it's so accurate in my opinion, is that InfoScale is a lot like a Swiss Army knife in terms of its capabilities of what it does in terms of availability and in terms of storage. I like the idea that it can be modular, right? And so that's one of the things that as I talk to my friends that are architects in container spaces that are developing these environments, one of the things they look for is flexibility. There's aspects they want to consume, other things they don't want to consume. Having that freedom seems to be pretty important. So it's great to see that InfoScale includes that. My question to you, Matt and Ryan, anything that you would want to double click on that you didn't get a chance to in that video earlier?
Not so much. I think the main thing, and that the question actually sort of highlights it, it's really kind of around that idea of like what you said, Alex, the idea of being modular or being able to provide a solution that gives our customers, the ability to use what you need or what you want based on what you're doing, right? Because we understand that everyone has different requirements and has different reasons to use different features. So it's that idea that InfoScale is providing you with that flexibility, but it's also giving you that whole kind of unique solution of where we can actually provide availability for your apps that are actually running inside containers, as well as the storage components. So to manage the enterprise and the important data that these applications use and need to be online and functional, we can actually manage availability, performance, and storage for all of that as one solution, which is a pretty unique thing out there at the moment. So it's kind of the main point that I always like to make with our container story with InfoScale.
I think one of the other things that stands out to me about InfoScale is that it has always been infrastructure agnostic. Since its very inception, 25, 26 years ago, whatever it was. And really, today containers are that, right? So the idea is I have an application stack. I don't care about what I'm consuming underneath all of that. It's just got to run. And so the idea that I can consume resources on the go, the idea that it's software defined and it's agnostic to the infrastructure, these are core tenets of InfoScale from back in the 90s. So of course, it's a logical thing to do to apply those same tenets that we've had in InfoScale since the 90s to containers, given the fact that just on the face of it, their premise seems to be so similar.
Yeah, totally agree. And that's another great point, is like being infrastructure agnostic and the ability to use really anything that you have or that you be looking at or that you might have in the future, and having a solution that'll accommodate that no matter what that is, right? So it's definitely one of InfoScale's better points, hands down, that whole infrastructure flexibility angle. Yep.
Yeah, and so I don't see any more questions, but feel free to ask them. And then if not, the only other point I would make is regarding like the advantages of using both the storage and the VCS functionality. Today, if I want to loop in those two functionalities into my container stack, how many different tools would I necessarily have to consume to be able to do that successfully versus InfoScale doing it from one solution's point of view?
I'll start out that, and Matthew, add in here where I'm off. But really, what we're doing here, it's the only other tool essentially that you'd be working with is really Kubernetes, right? So mostly what we're doing here, it's all based on kind of integration and seamless user experience with a native Kubernetes environment. So anyone of you guys that are out there using Kubernetes today, what you're going to see with InfoScale is that there's really nothing more to it. There's no other tools you really need to learn or any other kind of management interfaces, that type of thing. It all works really seamlessly with your native Kubernetes platform right now.
So I love.
Sorry,
go ahead, Matthew. Yeah.
Sorry, Alex. And you got to remember, there's also other features we bring to the table. Like we give you the ability to do migrations with the InfoScale shared storage. We give you the ability to have shared storage, which allows you to have containers mount storage with read-write many between different containers. So lots of your applications can access the same data at the same time if you really wanted that to happen. If you were to go with just a point solution with Kubernetes, you'd have to then find a secondary shared storage solution to go along with the Kubernetes platform.
And we have a couple more questions in the Q&A. One of them is pretty straightforward. Does the interoperability for the container functionality of Infoscale plug into the normal Ops Manager dashboard for Infoscale?
That is currently not available, but we believe it's on the roadmap.
Yeah, we're looking to do that in the future. Yeah.
Okay, it looks like there's some interest for that, some from the folks. We mentioned we wanted feedback from the community, and so that's good to have.
Perfect.
And then another question, and I think this is a really good one, is they want a little more detail around how Infoscale helps migrate applications to containers. In other words, do I have to have migrated them myself ahead of time, or can Infoscale help migrate from a traditional server base to containers for an application?
So when we talk about migration, what we're talking about is having let's take a MySQL database, for example, and you have it running on a bare metal Linux server, the traditional way. Now, let's say you want to make it containerized. What you can then do is install Kubernetes on top of that bare metal server, and all of a sudden you now have a containerized environment. What we can help you with is if you install Infoscale storage, we can give you a path towards moving those files, those MySQL database files, into a persistent storage framework, shall I say, so that your container can then mount it and access that persistent data.
That makes sense. All right, and it looks like that's the only other question we had there. Ryan, did you have anything else to add regarding what Matt addressed there regards to migration?
No, and I think it was a really good way to cover it, is that it makes it really easy to basically move the data from your application if you're running in a physical or virtual environment today and you want to move that into a containerized environment. Doing that with Infoscale and the way it's architected, it actually becomes really easy within the Kubernetes environment. So it's if that's something you are looking to do, is migration from whatever environment you have, physical or virtual, into a containerized platform today, then yeah, the way Infoscale works can definitely help with that and makes it pretty easy to do. So.
And it sounds like, based on the answers you're giving to these questions, that one of the key value props here that we're talking about with regards to Infoscale is that if you're already familiar with Infoscale, fantastic. Good news. You don't have to reinvent the wheel as you deal with Kubernetes. You can apply the same skill set that you already have with your applications to your new Kubernetes environment. The other value, of course, is even if you're not already familiar with Infoscale, if you're completely new to it, it still provides a layer of abstraction that makes it that much easier to consume containers, consume Kubernetes in your environments. Anything to add to that?
Yeah, perfect description. And I would say, obviously we have a lot of focus on enterprise applications and being able to, to provide a platform that really helps you guys run those more important enterprise type applications within a container environment. But it really works across any type of application or nearly any type of app. So whatever kinds of apps that you have, and maybe you have the requirement just for storage, maybe it's just for high availability, or maybe it's both. It's really flexible around what you can do with applications running in containers. So there's lots of different ways it can help. Overall with your application experience inside a containerized environment.
Yeah, and I think that brings up a quote I often rephrase or paraphrase from a friend of mine, Joe D'Angelo, is, if it has a stop-start function, Infoscale can consume it, right? And so I think that's a pretty powerful statement there in terms of how broad Infoscale can be. Now including Kubernetes and containers. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
All right, well, we got a minute to go. Any closing statements, Matt, Ryan, before we close out?
No, thanks again for watching. And again, we'd be happy to have a conversation with anyone there. If if there's something maybe you didn't hear of that you had an interest in doing, or we're just kind of wondering if we were exploring, other ideas that you maybe didn't hear as part of the roadmap, we'd always welcome a conversation. Be happy to work with you to just understand what you're doing with containers and how you're moving towards that type of environment, and what your requirements are. So yeah, by all means, please feel free to get in touch with any one of us or your Veritas reps, and we'd be happy to keep the conversation going.
Well, awesome. Thanks so much, Matt and Ryan. Appreciate your time. And thanks everyone for attending our session, and enjoy the rest of the event. Conquer every cloud.
Thanks, guys.